Welcome back to Caps Hockey Review. Back with you for the first time since our Capitals were eliminated from the Stanley Cup playoffs. A lot to break down today. We'll get into all of it. We have trades to discuss. Free agency is right around the corner, coming up in just a day's time. We have injuries. We have potential free agents. So much to break down. Let's get into it. Caps Hockey Review. Let's go. And we are underway. It is Caps Hockey Review, back with you again. Finally, it is probably my favorite, or one of my favorite times of the NHL season. I guess off season this would be. Free agency. It's an exciting time of year. You know, it's obviously with the draft just finishing up. We've got a lot of trades, a lot of player movement, and there's, definitely a lot more to come here in the next couple days. The tampering period, or the negotiation period, officially begins for free agents to discuss with teams aside from the one that they are under contract to. Begins tomorrow. The contracts will officially expire at noon on Wednesday, which will open NHL free agency. But for the Caps, we'll get to free agency. We'll take a spin around the NHL, get to some of the big signings, big trades from the draft weekend. Speaking of draft weekend, our Capitals, if you're here to hear me break down the draft for the Caps, I'm not doing it. I just so much more going on at prospects I'm not too worried about right now. The outlook for this team could be pretty dramatically changed, and I think is going to be changed quite a bit here in the next couple days. But right off the hop, trade news, big trade on the weekend. Vitek Vanacek has been traded to the New Jersey Devils. The Devils and the Caps swapped second-round picks in this year's draft. The Caps also picked up an additional pick in the third round from the Devils in this year's draft. So all the collateral for this trade has already been used, so we have to wait and see what the prospects pan out to be. Looking at this trade, well, it had to happen. Brian McClellan has talked in his meetings with the media, even, after playoff elimination happened, and especially this heated up heading into the draft with the media availability. Brian McClellan said very clearly, we are in the market for a veteran goaltender. Now, goaltending in the NHL is not a bicycle built for three. So we knew, Vanacek, Samsonov, neither of these guys is going to go back to Hershey. It's not going to do either of them any good to play in Hershey at this point. They played in the NHL long enough. Playing in Hershey developmentally is not going to help them. So we knew a trade was coming. So Vanacek, I had my money on Vanacek being traded just because Samsonov is, in my mind, still the prospect or the one they're looking at to kind of take the crease. But we'll get to that later because, that statement may not be true either now. So Vanacek to the Devils opens up at least one spot for this veteran goalie we're looking for. Other team news, injury outlooks. God dang, we're not even playing hockey yet, and we already got injuries to talk about. Nick Backstrom underwent a successful procedure to resurface his hip. McClellan has also been very honest about this and saying he does expect Backstrom to play this season. When and where, that's extremely unclear. He didn't give much else on that. He expects Backstrom to play at some point this season. We don't know when. It could be a situation like last year where we don't see him for the first half of the year, and then, we see him here and there throughout the second half. The goal, from my understanding, and Backstrom's meetings with the media, with cleanup day or, breakdown day, was that he was, obviously still very interested in playing hockey, playing for the Capitals, and he was looking into all his options. Now that tells me a couple things. Okay, clearly he still wants to play hockey. Retirement is off the table at this point. But he's still exploring various options. He ultimately did go with the surgery, but that tells me this hip thing is not affecting his day-to-day life outside hockey. Now, we can argue, and it'd be a very good argument, that as a professional hockey player, part of your day-to-day life for 9 months out of the year is as a hockey player. And if you can't do that, then it certainly does affect your day-to-day life. So Backstrom return date is unclear. He did have a procedure to resurface the lining of his hip. That is very good news, depending on his recovery and all the time for that. Like I said, McClellan does expect we will see Backstrom at some point this season. I would certainly hope so. Now, that kind of opens another door. We have a lot of branches on this tree today. This is going to be kind of a long video. I usually hover in that 20 to 30 minute range. We might be going long today, so stick with me here. Further injury news: Tom Wilson obviously tearing his ACL in that series with the Florida Panthers. 6 to 8 month recovery time roughly. That puts him on track to return. Probably at the earliest would be December, and frankly that's probably a little ambitious. I would definitely be looking for him to target more of January, February for a return time. So we're not gonna have Wilson probably first half of the season. That's gonna open up that right wing side. Backstrom, we're not too sure. There's gonna be a center spot open. Lars Eller, also potential trade candidate. He's really fallen off. I don't know what a trade could fetch, but the center depth I think is in trouble for the Caps here. McClellan has already stated they will not go explore or go find an expensive solution to this center issue. That conveys maybe some optimism on the Backstrom front, but at this point it's all speculation. And that could have just been posturing by him. You're always listening to trades, always listening to possible free agent acquisitions. So this is a big wait and see game. The waters right now are very murky for the Capitals. The outlook is very unclear right now. And hopefully, by the end of the week, we'll have a lot of those questions answered and everything's going to be much more clear. Further, one last injury to get to. Carl Hagelin. Our old buddy Carl. That eye injury kept him out of the playoffs. Johan Larsson steps in. He is uncertain as well. He has said he will not make a decision until probably August, about the time to get ready to report and start skating before training camp. Obviously he's got to make a decision before training camp and preseason. And that may also affect some signings and re-signings for the Capitals as well, depending on his decision. So injuries aside, we're through the injuries. A lot of minor league re-signings. There's one big re-signing so far for the Capitals. Defenseman Lucas Johansson has been re-upped for 2 years, about $760,000 average annual value. So very good contract, and he may have a shot to make this team out of training camp. We'll get into, pending free agents that played for the Capitals last season. And again, this thought will become much more clear. So getting to these free agents, the big name for the Caps, Justin Schultz is most likely gone. In my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinion, the play for Justin Schultz did not justify the contract. He got the Caps good those 2 years with the back-to-back cups with the Penguins, but wasn't quite that same player anymore. Matt Irwin also, in and out last season. He could stay. We don't really know yet. Michael Kempny is gone. He will return back to the Czechia, as it's now called, to play professional hockey back home. Further, we have, Marcus Johansson. Good chance he's gone. We don't really know yet. We're going to wait and see. Johan Larsson, I talked about, Hagelin's decision affecting a few things. The re-signing of Johan Larsson could play a factor in that, because these two are basically, they're fourth line left wingers. You don't really need two of them, so that situation is also interesting. I would expect they'll re-sign Larson. They liked him. He looked good. He was very serviceable in the role that he played. This is where things get weird. I guess first off, Phoenix Copley, we get to goaltending. Phoenix Copley, again, unclear, not really much playtime with the Capitals at all these past few seasons. The big name. And with that Vitek Vanacek trade, my thought that, okay, this team is committing to Ilya Samsonov as the guy of the future. They're going to bring in a veteran to help bridge that gap a little bit, maybe give him more development time. News just breaking this afternoon. The Caps did not extend a qualifying offer to Ilya Samsonov. You can tell by your ticker here at the bottom of the screen. This is interesting because now this suggests to me it's very unlikely they're going to re-sign him because now he hits the open market. He's restricted. You have his rights. You extend him a qualifying offer. You have more time to work out a deal. Letting him hit the open market is almost taking a step backwards. Why would you let him hit the open market just to ultimately re-sign him? Doesn't make sense. So also, there's a very good chance the whole goaltending tandem changes for the Caps for next season. And that's another one of these things. Goaltending is the biggest hole on this team. It's the biggest question we've had. It's been a question now for a couple years. We've finally, management, coaching, finally committed to go out, get some veteran help. But we're getting rid of both young guys. This is an odd situation to me. And I guess that kind of leads us into what free agency will bring on Wednesday for the Caps as far as maybe signing somebody. One thing the Caps do have this offseason that they have not had in quite a long time is a fairly good amount of cap space. Sitting right this minute, according to Cap Friendly, the Caps sit at $8.978 million in cap space. It's not a ton. It's definitely not, riches, but very, a lot more than they've had in the past. So they almost, Cup contenders spend to the cap. They are still very intent on contending for the Stanley Cup. They will spend to the salary cap, so it's really just a matter of how they're going to use it, not if they're going to use it. This kind of brings us to potential free agents. I'm burning through the list here today a little bit. Potential free agents. We're going to start with goalies because that's the most obvious target. I mean, your trade for a goalie is almost off the table at this point, which kind of disappoints me a little bit. I mean, I would have expected if this team were to trade either Vanacek or Samsonov, they would bring another goalie back in the deal. Whether it took trading one of these guys and a couple, high picks for a proven veteran or something. But Vanacek trade doesn't bring back a goalie. Obviously, letting Sammy hit the open market, you're not getting anything in return for him. This is interesting. It's got to be part of the plan for McClellan and the front office for this summer, this free agent period. This is very, very interesting. I guess we'll get into potential free agent targets from the chatter that's circulating social media. One very likely candidate to fill this goaltending role, at least the starting role, Darcy Kemper, confirmed last week that he would hit the open market. The Avalanche certainly do have a lot to get re-signed, including Naz Kadri, Val Nichushkin, and it certainly is conceivable. I mean, Kemper had a solid season, so he could command probably $6 million, and it's maybe just a situation where Colorado doesn't have the kind of cap space to be able to accommodate him and everything else that they want to. So Darcy Kuemper is on the open market. This is a likely one for me. If Kuemper wants to be a Capital, I think he will be a Capital, because from the Caps end, it's sounding like the Caps are very, very interested. He won a Stanley Cup this year. Now, we can go back and forth on, is it a good deal for the Capitals? Well, yeah, he won a Stanley Cup and he looked pretty good. I mean, in the regular season, he gave up some soft ones here and there. It happens to everybody. But, 921 save percentage this season, 248 goals against average, 37 wins. Pretty damn good. I mean, he's above NHL average on save percentage. That's a marked improvement over what the Caps have had these last couple of years. Both Vanecek and Samsonov have hovered underneath league average for save percentage these last couple seasons. So looking just at the stat line, I'd say maybe it's a win for the Caps, but it all depends on term. I mean, Kemper's in his 30s. I certainly wouldn't be kicking an 8-year contract to a goalie in his 30s. I just wouldn't do it. Obviously, I'm not the GM, not my call to make. But Kuemper seems to be, based on chatter, based on rumor, out of Caps land, Kuemper seems to be the number one target. Okay. My concern with that, how do I put this gently? He played behind an absolute juggernaut of a team last year. I'm not saying he's not a good goalie. I am not out here to say Darcy Kuemper would not help the Capitals. I am saying I think the numbers from this previous season would have looked different for him had he played on a team that, the defense, the decor on that team is loaded. They improved it before the playoffs. This is tough. This is a tough situation because free agency, when you look at it through an objective lens, and this goes for every year, it seems every year there's always these big free agents on the market. I mean, this year it's Evgeny Malkin, to a greater extent Johnny Gaudreau. He seems to be the number one, the biggest fish in the pond this year. And I'll just say that, I'll just say it. Teams have a terrible tendency to overpay at far too much term for these free agents. They offer ridiculously high average annual values for way longer than the player's prime is going to last. Free agency for NHL teams is a great trap to fall into if you make the wrong decisions. Going after these big fish at free agency, these big players, this year it's the Johnny Gaudreaus of the world. I'm not saying he's not going to be good wherever else he goes. He may very damn well be better than he was in Calgary. Who knows? But look at history a little bit. The big one that sticks out to me from recent years is John Tavares. He gets that huge contract from the Maple Leafs, 8 years, over $10 million on the average annual value. He has not lived up to that dollar figure at that term. He was named their captain. He's a great leader, great hockey player, great person. That's all well and good. When you look at the production for the dollar value that he's making, he has not lived up to the deal. And we see this all the time at free agency. So for the Caps, you got to be careful because it's pretty clear they're looking for a goalie. I don't know that they have the assets to trade that would net them a goalie that's a marked improvement over what they've had. So Darcy Kuemper is one potential target. Jack Campbell is another potential target. I like the idea on Jack Campbell a little bit better. The Maple Leafs were a very good team. Very, very strong offensive team, not as strong defensively. But again, I think this might be a trap for the Capitals to fall into. Campbell last season, numbers weren't quite as good. 914 save percentage, 264 goals against average, 31 wins. A little bit of injury concerns as well. These two seem to be the prime candidates for the Capitals, at least at free agency. Now, just because a trade might be difficult doesn't mean it's not possible. Goalie-wise, the biggest name I've heard that I would be the most excited to see, and I think every other Caps fan out there would be, hands down, bar none, John Gibson. Anaheim Ducks. Gibson has made it known to the Ducks front office that he will accept a trade, and he is willing to move his no. Excuse me. He is willing to move any clause he has. I'm not sure if he has a no move clause, but he informed the organization. Now, this is his way of basically saying, contract's not up, but when the time comes, I'm probably not re-signing here. So he's basically giving them notice. If you want to get something out of me, trade me, because I'm probably not going to re-sign. Which is interesting for me. I mean, the Ducks last year, certainly it didn't finish the way they would have wanted, but some young, exciting guys in Anaheim. But it's been a while since the Ducks were ultra competitive in the playoffs. It's been, gosh, they made that conference final in 2017. I don't even know if they've made the playoffs since. So it's been a while. It's been a tough ride for Gibson. He is widely regarded, and looking at the numbers these last few years, yes, they're down a little bit for him, but widely regarded as probably one of the best goalies in the NHL. Had the Olympics happened, my firm belief is he would have been the starting goalie for Team USA. Anyway, Gibson is available. Now, the trade, that's tough because now you don't have a goalie to send. And I just don't think a trade for Gibson's going to work. The Caps are going to have to give up a lot. There's not too much out there there's not a lot that the Caps have that I think the Ducks could be super interested in. I mean, maybe a Hendrix Lapierre, maybe a Connor McMichael, but at that point, the Caps are kind of shooting their own pipeline in the foot. This is a really, really ugly situation, I think, for the Caps, but we'll have to see how it plays out. This goaltending situation, for my money, if I had to bet on one, I would guess Darcy Kemper more than likely will be the prime target for the Capitals. It's more than likely probably going to come down to money, and we'll see what happens there. For who I would like the Caps to get, hands down, John Gibson. If they could swing a trade, if they could engineer some deal, Evgeny Kuznetsov would be probably the best trade chip the Capitals have. My goodness. However, I already talked about it. Center depth is going to be something to be desired at the beginning of the season and throughout, possibly, if Backstrom isn't good to go. So trading your best center probably isn't the best idea right now. So there's a lot of questions here. I'm not answering very many today because it's a wait and see kind of game. Moving past goaltending. Forwards. With the Capitals missing Tom Wilson for the first probably half the season. At least I'd say probably the first 30, 40 games we won't see him. So this also changes things a little bit. And we saw last year, I mean, the Caps' depth was really tested with all the injuries to forwards. I mean, now we're looking at, okay, potentially not having Backstrom, maybe not having Hagelin. His replacement's already kind of available if he's not good to go. And, Tom Wilson, Nick Backstrom, these are two huge holes that the Caps are going to have to fill at some point in this season. So, again, you don't have a ton of money. You have more than you've had in the past for free agency, but depending on what you spend on a goalie, that's going to be first priority. I would not expect the Caps to go out and make a huge splash signing a big-name forward, just with the injury concerns that this team has had over the past couple seasons, especially with that forward group. TJ Oshie has struggled. Backstrom has struggled. Ovechkin's been in and out at times. Kuznetsov has been in and out at times. We need stability in that forward group. Now, potential options here. Sticking with potential free agents, Dylan Strome. And I start there, and some of you may even be like, well, who the hell is Dylan Strome? Chicago Blackhawks center, 25 years old, career high in goals this year, put up 22 goals this last season. The Blackhawks did not tender him a qualifying offer, so he will hit the open market on Wednesday. I like this move for the Caps for two reasons. Upside potential, scoring, center, I guess 3 reasons, and 3, he's probably not going to command a high dollar value. He's still an RFA. The production for him, he was selected 3rd overall by the Arizona Coyotes back in, I want to say, whichever year McDavid was drafted. I can't keep it straight. I know the best player maybe ever, and I can't remember which year he was drafted. I want to say 17. I think it's wrong, though. Anyway. Drafted that same year. He was McDavid's running partner in their junior days in Erie. Definitely upside potential here. Upside potential, centerman, low dollar value. This checks all the boxes I think the Caps are looking for in a forward at free agency. Further options, which I think is completely unrealistic. Naz Kadri, Colorado Avalanche, set to hit the open market. Here's why. Naz Kadri just had himself a career year. 87 points. That passes his previous career high by a lot. His previous career high was 50. This guy is going to be due a significant raise. He was sitting at 4.5 AAV. This dollar value is going to go way up. I would expect him to land probably somewhere in the 8 to 10 range, depending on which team, which cap space. But Naz Kadri, I do not think will be a capital. I don't think the Caps have that kind of money to shell out, nor do they want to. So, forward options are a little slim as well. I mean, salaries are going through the roof for these forwards. Obviously, a guy like Johnny Gaudreau is probably going to set the market, and it's kind of trickled down from there a little bit. Another potential option at free agency, I think just as unlikely as Kadri, is Evgeny Malkin. A little surprised Malkin's going to hit the open market because we all expected him to be a Penguin for life. He made it clear he was willing to take less money to stay in Pittsburgh, but the Penguins, shell out a lot of money to Chris Letang, and maybe the money's just not going to work out. But certainly an interesting situation. Like I said, we all kind of expected him to be Penguins for life, or a Penguin for life. And it's not looking like that's going to be the case. I mean, they could certainly still get a deal done. He doesn't have to sign the first day of free agency with whoever offers him a deal or anything like that, obviously. So they could still get a deal done. I've seen, the rumor mill. Of course, the rumor mill always spins. I don't like the deal. He's a Penguin. I don't think he's going to fit in with the Capitals, and I'll be honest, the Caps just kind of have this nasty little habit these last few years of picking up the Penguins' leftovers, for lack of a better term. Justin Schultz, Carl Hagelin, Connor Sherry. Sherry has worked out very well. Schultz, not so much. Hagelin, pretty good. But Daniel Sprong as well. Sprong didn't really work out. So, and the age thing. If nothing else, Malkin, 35 years old, it's counterproductive to what the Caps need. It's been acknowledged by just about everybody out there, and even by the Caps front office. This team is old. They're trying to get younger. Signing Malkin goes against all of that. On top of that, Malkin has been bogged down in injuries these last couple seasons. He has not completed a full NHL season. Very often in his NHL career, he's always, hit an injury patch just about, every year. So Malkin, I mean, you already struggle with an aging forward group. You already struggle with injuries with your forward group. Malkin just doesn't seem to fit the mold, in my opinion. Now, could that be wrong? Certainly. Certainly it could. Other potential targets out there for the Caps, this would be via trade. I've seen this one quite a bit, and I like this one as well. JT Miller. Vancouver Canucks coming off, I believe, a career high 99 points this last season. Very obviously has offensive upside. He's late 20s, so he's got some tread left on the tires. Coming into the last year of his contract, that's it's maybe a little bit of risky business trading for a guy in the last year of a deal. But if he improves your team, cool. For Miller, he can win a faceoff. He plays wing, but he can also play center. That could kind of be a double-edged sword here. I mean, if you're missing Backstrom, you can slide him into a center spot. If you're getting Backstrom back, but Wilson's out, you can bump him over to the wing. He's versatile in that forward role. So that's always good. He's responsible defensively and knows when to kick it into high gear on offense. That sounds like a Laviolette guy if I've ever seen one. So, again, a trade for this guy. I mean, he's had a great year. He's going to command a high return. In this case, it's going to be a trade. So it's not a matter of money. It's a matter of having the available assets to trade for him. And quite frankly, I mean, Vancouver, they came up, a little short of the playoffs last year. Had they had our old boy Bruce Boudreau behind the bench for the whole season, I think they would have made the playoffs. They went on a tear after Boudreau was brought in as the interim head coach. That interim tag has been removed. He is now the head coach of the Vancouver Canucks. I believe if he had been there the whole season, they would have made the playoffs. So trading a guy like JT Miller, I don't think makes their odds of making the playoffs better. Again, to do that, they would have to get somebody who's NHL ready. I mean, unless the Caps want to trade TJ Oshie and picks or prospects, I mean, I can't work out what exactly it would cost. It's going to be a high cost. Like these two trade targets I've hashed out in here, Gibson, Miller, probably don't have the assets for both of them. I mean, I'll just say that. I think if you're going to try to trade for one, I think Miller's the one to go for because I think he'll command less value. I could be wrong, but Miller, I think, would be maybe the better option. In terms, looking strictly, I think long-term Gibson would probably be the better option, but looking at what's available for what you're able to offer, I think Miller probably makes the most sense for this team. So, we are, as I said, we're not to free agency yet. Monday evening, right now. Monday evening. That was a really weird way to say that. It is Monday evening, about 7:30 Eastern time this minute. Players can begin meeting with teams tomorrow. So Johnny Gaudreau can go meet with whoever he wants. UFAs can go meet with whoever they want. Discuss deals. Free agency opens at noon Eastern on Wednesday. Signings are probably going to happen pretty quickly. So we're just going to have to keep the eyes and the ears open. I will do a free agency recap after, sometime near the end of the week once we get a better idea what this team's going to look like. So a lot of uncertainty right now in Caps land. Certainly things look really weird. We don't really have either a starter or a backup for the NHL level right now. Zach Fucale maybe could be a backup for this team, but it's an interesting situation. So we are going to keep the eyes and the ears open for now on this team. And I guess looking forward, we're going to take a spinner on the NHL. That'll pretty much wrap it for Caps news for this thing. Spinning through the NHL. Big trades, big trades, big signings over the weekend. The one that grabbed, I think, the most attention because it happened first. This one came before the draft. The Ottawa Senators have they've added Alex DeBrincat from the Chicago Blackhawks. Now that opens another story into itself, and I'll get there. But DeBrincat, 40 goal scorer, quick as a hiccup, great hands, offensive upside is just through the roof, and it's a very good piece. He has some experience. He's been in the league for a little bit, but he's still young. I think he's a great add to this young Senators group. They're just inching closer. They are very, very close to assembling a very strong hockey team. Also, rumor while we're on the Senators, the Maple Leafs and the Senators are in deep trade talks on Matt Murray. Big contract, tough couple years. I don't know how the hell this deal is going to get done. If they do, they get that contract off the books and possibly are free to pursue a new goalie, either free agency or via trade. Kind of the remaining holes for the Senators are still defense, goaltending, but DeBrincat really pushes them much closer to being a playoff contender, and obviously they're not done yet this offseason. Ottawa Senators could be a force to be reckoned with this season. Pardon me. Moving forward, staying with the Hawks. I guess we'll just run through the Hawks here because they're blowing it up. The microwave rebuild didn't work last year. They went out, they signed Seth Jones, signed Tyler Johnson, signed Marc-Andre Fleury, they traded for Seth Jones. Didn't work. So, DeBrincat's out. He's your best player under the age of 30. Now they've gone and traded Kirby Dach. Probably they're... I won't call him a prospect because he's been around for a little bit, but if there were probably two guys that you were going to center your rebuild around, it would have probably been DeBrincat and Dach. And those two are gone. So the Blackhawks are going just scorched earth. I think that was the term used by their management team at the draft. So Kirby Dach is now a Montreal Canadian. Big changes. And this finally opened the door for Patrick Kane, and I knew this was probably coming, approached Blackhawks management, and he will submit a formal request for a trade on Wednesday. Early news, his top pick as far as a landing spot would be the New York Rangers. Team full of young guns, a lot of upside potential, Vezina winning goaltender, and he would reunite with the bread man. Wow. That would be nasty. That would be one hell of a force to deal with in the Metropolitan Division. Caps, it pertains to the Capitals because if this trade happens, if the New York Rangers manage to acquire Patrick Kane, I have no idea how the Caps have a hope of winning that division. I mean, even without that, you still have to contend with Carolina. I think they're better than the Caps. Penguins are probably better than the Caps at this point. Flyers, we don't know what they're doing yet. They may be better than the Caps. They've added, this will get to my next acquisition. Tony DeAngelo gets traded from the Hurricanes to the Flyers, immediately re-signed 2 years, $5 million AAV. This is kind of addressing that defense issue that the Flyers have. Ivan Provorov has not been happy with the team. He's probably on his way out. Ryan Ellis dealt with a lot of injuries last year. So DeAngelo is definitely going to stabilize things in Philly on that back end. Rumor is they've been talking to Johnny Gaudreau, so we could see Johnny Hockey end up in Philly. We'll see. This Metropolitan Division has definitely been in a state of flux these last few days, and it's going to continue. The Penguins re-up Chris Letang. You know, this is a tough deal to get a finger on the pulse of because he came off a career season in assists and points. He's due a raise by that logic. He's due a raise, but looking at his age, 35 years old, he was already making just a skosh under $6 million per season. Excuse me. The Penguins. 6 years, $6.5 million AAV. They will pay Chris Letang $6.5 million until he is 41 years old. Wow. That may have just broken the mold and probably kicked open the door for these, mid-30s defensemen to keep getting long contracts. Letang, I mean, credit to him and his agent. He made it absolutely clear he didn't pull any punches. He was willing to go where he was going to make the most money. He made it very clear, if the Penguins were not willing to shell out the money, somebody else would, and he would be willing to sign elsewhere. Now, that brings us back to Malkin. We don't really know yet. The Penguins are kind of in the same state of flux as the Caps. There's a lot of questions that haven't been answered yet, and you just kind of have to sit back and wait. Elsewhere, getting out of the East, I guess West, we were talking Blackhawks a little bit. The Avalanche, defending Stanley Cup champions, busy summer ahead. Quite a few guys to get re-signed. Obviously, Darcy Kemper will not now be re-signed by the Avalanche. The Avalanche trade for Alex Georgiev, New York Rangers backup. Showed a lot of promise early in the career. He's still very young. I think it's a good deal for the Avs. 3 years, $3.5 million. Him and Pavel Francouz will be the tandem for the Avalanche moving forward, per the newly promoted former general manager Joe Sakic. News out today, he was promoted from GM and vice president of hockey ops to the president of hockey operations. He is no longer the GM. The assistant general manager, his name is escaping me, I apologize, has been promoted to the new Avs general manager. Way to go, Joe. His management career has been damn near flawless. I mean, he took this team from 48-point team 4 or 5 years ago and turned him into an absolute force. So, good on you, Joe Sakic. Good on you, my favorite childhood player. Congratulations. Good luck, Avs, moving forward. My second favorite team. Happy to see them win the cup. I didn't really give them a shout out, so good on you, Avalanche. Now you got to defend it. Staying with them for a moment, Val Nichushkin has also been re-signed. The news just coming out a little bit ago. 8 years, $6.13 million AAV. Big force for them in the playoffs. He scored a lot of big goals for this team, scored a lot of big goals throughout the year, and a guy who, quite frankly, a couple of years ago, it didn't look like we'd ever see again. He went back to Russia, kind of bailed on a contract, and didn't look like he'd ever show up in the NHL again. Popped back up with the Avalanche and kind of worked his way back up, and definitely worked out for the Avs in the long run. He's really blossomed into an awesome secondary offensive kind of guy. So great on the Avalanche for getting these guys re-upped. Great on these guys for cashing in. And finally, I've already mentioned it, but Johnny Gaudreau seems to be the big question mark. We don't know where he's going to go. He seems to be the one that's going to set the market here for free agency for forwards. Letang could have been that, but obviously getting re-upped, maybe that's not the case. Elsewhere, a couple other things to button up here. Big names. Nashville Predators re-signed Philip Forsberg. 8 years, gets the max term, 8.5 AAV. They also have acquired Ryan McDonagh from the Tampa Bay Lightning. So they bolster that back end a little bit with McDonagh. They lock in the centerpiece of their forward group. They're going to push. I mean, had they had UC Saros in the playoffs, I think that Avs series would have gone a little longer. I don't know that they ultimately would have won, but it would have been a lot closer than it was. So that about wraps it up for this edition of Caps Hockey Review. I will be keeping my finger on the pulse of talks and rumors around the NHL. Free agency opens on Wednesday. It's going to be a heck of a day. There's going to be a lot of changes. Probably some trades, tons of signings, and I will be back with you probably toward the end of this week or early next week. We'll review it. This was Caps Hockey preview, I suppose. Caps Hockey review of free agency will take place sometime probably in the next 7 days. Until then, my friends, go Caps.